I have already done a video comparing Nazism and communism as ideologies. Today, rather than looking at the actual ideologies, we will be looking at the symbolism. Is the hammer and sickle comparable to the swastika as a symbol, and should its use be avoided by those on the left? We will answer this question by looking at the logic that makes the swastika bad, and seeing if that same logic applies to the hammer and sickle. I think we will find that some anti-swastika logic does invalidate the hammer and sickle, while some does not necessarily invalidate this favourite symbol of the left. It all comes down to what argument you use for the swastika being a bad symbol. If you condemn the swastika because evil was committed under a party that used it, it would probably be consistent to similarly condemn the use of hammer and sickle imagery, because the USSR used it as a symbol, as they committed atrocities. You would probably try to refute this by saying, well, the hammer and the sickle originated as a good symbol, and one bad regime does not change its meaning. The response to this is of course very simple. The swastika was not always a bad symbol. It became one after evil was famously committed under it, and it was appropriated by bad people who committed that evil. The same is true of the hammer and sickle, meaning this logic would also lead to it being invalidated and thrown aside. Of course, you could argue that the USSR was not a murderous dictatorship, but you would be wrong. However, I do believe that there is a way you can condemn the use of the swastika as a symbol, and yourself use the hammer and sickle while being a decent and logically consistent person. You could argue that they are different because the ideologies they stand for are different. I think this can be a strong and effective argument. You could argue that we should condemn the swastika because it represents an inherently evil Nazi ideology. The hammer and sickle, meanwhile, represents communism or socialism, which is not inherently evil, and some may argue is a good thing. Personally, I think in most cases avoiding the hammer and sickle is probably a good idea. It is kind of LARPy, and can be offensive to some people, and most of all it is just bad optically, as many people see it as a symbol of totalitarianism and mass murder. It is unfortunate that the symbol has been stained with such a bad reputation, as it can and often does stand for legitimate good things. But that is their reality, and we must deal with it. There are plenty of other leftist symbols that we can use, that have not been tainted. In some situations, the hammer and sickle could still be a useful symbol. It all depends on context and how tainted it is in a particular time and place. I have no serious issue with people using the hammer and sickle, but I would simply recommend otherwise, and I will not be doing it myself.